Okay, so I'm going to go back to my little instructions file here and read the description of the next problem. Okay, so the next problem is talking about running two services that can be used to access files on a file server, and that would be anonymous FTP implemented by the VSFTPD service, and another thing called anonymous Rsync. Now, Rsync is a pretty cool tool. I find it useful in a lot of situations. Not many people are real familiar with this, and so I'm going to kind of introduce it first. And you can see in the instructions there I've given a little summary of a quick way you can check and see if your Rsync service is working. Now, quite often, Rsync is actually tunneled over SSH, which means you need an account to log into. And what we're trying to set up here is anonymous Rsync, something you can do without any account credentials at all. So here's a command I can use to test this and see if it is working. And again, as you're starting to troubleshoot any problem, it's a good idea just to verify exactly what are the symptoms of the problem itself. Okay, so I'm going to try this rsync command. And I see, yes, in fact, it does not work, and it tells me that it failed to connect to the service on localhost. Okay, well, for that matter, let's try to connect to FTP on localhost and see what problem we might be experiencing there, because that's kind of part of this compound problem. So I'm going to try to FTP to localhost and see what happens. Okay, now this is very funny looking. It says, I get the line there that says connected, but I was not prompted to log in, not even with the anonymous user. And something kind of funny, there was a little line of output there that also mentioned rsync, which now that's really weird if you think about it. When I try to connect to FTP, something comes back saying rsync. It sounds like I'm having some kind of a conflict here. And so I'm going to try to resolve this conflict now. Now, my favorite command, one of my favorite commands in the whole world, is to check and see what is listening on the network. And we can do this with a set of flags to the netstat command. So different people have memorized different sets of flags here. I'm going to show you my favorite set. I'm going to get numeric output from netstat. We're going to look at both TCP and UDP connections. And I'm only interested in things that are listening on the network, not active connected sockets, only things that are listening. And then when I find anything that meets those categories, I want to see the PID number and the process, the name of the process that's running to listen there. Okay, so let's see what this returns us. A little bit too much output, kind of scrolled by really quick there. Let's try that again. Okay, and page through it one page at a time. Let's see. Okay, so because we're on the console here, we have a very narrow terminal, and so this is wrapping over two lines. But if you look, there is a line where on port 21, the process listening on port 21 is not what I would expect, which would have been VSFTPD. The process listening is XINetD, so I need to investigate and understand what's going on there. I'm going to show you the exact same output one more time, only a bit more specific here. I'm going to try that same command, and this time I'm just going to use grep to look for specifically port 21, because that's where I see something weird is going on. Okay, so port 21, I should have VSFTP listening, but I do not. So the question is, why is that? Okay. So let's investigate further. First of all, is VSFTP even running? There's a couple of ways to check that. One would be something like service VSFTPD status. Okay, and it says dead but subsystem locked. Okay, that's funny. Well, is it even running? Does it show up in a process listing? So here's a process listing, and we'll see if anything is running with FTP. And there really is not any service running. All you see is my grep command there. Okay, well, why would the service be dead? What if I were to try something like this? How about a service VSFTPD restart? Okay, so it was not running in the first place, and it claims to have successfully started the service, but let's see if I can tell if it's telling the truth. Okay, it seems like it's not even telling the truth. It claimed to be successful, but it's not really running. Okay, well, what else is going on? Okay, Rsync, it turns out, is actually a sub-service of XINetD, and that's what we saw listening on 21. That does not seem to be appropriate, XINetD on port 21. So let's take a look here, is the output of all of my subservices. I'm going to get this from the checkconfig --list output. Okay, let's see what that shows me. Okay, it scrolls by, and then down here at the bottom, we have all of the services based on XINetD, one of which, of course, is Rsync. Okay, so I have two different ways I need to go about getting more information here. And ultimately, I'm going to go look under etc xinetd.d. Okay, this is the location where all of these subservices are configured. Okay, one of which, like I said, is Rsync. And Rsync has a nice small little configuration file here. I'm going to take a look at that one real quick. Okay, so this is the configuration for the subservice of XINetD, which is implementing or offering anonymous Rsync. Okay, and a couple of details I want to point out. This block enclosed in curly braces has a header line at the top that says service rsync. Okay, and that's kind of a clue. Service rsync. It's actually going to tell us where it's getting the information about which port to listen on. And furthermore, you see a socket type of stream. Now, there's only two possible different socket types. It could be for TCP or for UDP. And it turns out socket type stream corresponds to TCP, whereas if it were to be UDP, that would have said socket type dgram. Socket type dgram would have been for UDP. Now, again, let's see, where did it get that information, knowing which port it should listen on? Okay, so I'm going to back up one level, and here I am, just my Etsy directory, and there's a vitally important file in here I'm going to go ahead and edit called services. This is simply the Etsy services file. Okay, so let's pull this up and see what we're looking at. Now, if you've never seen this before, this is a pretty cool quick reference. You can get the standard port for a lot of different services, a lot of common well-known services. I'm going to scroll down and look for Rsync. In fact, I'm going to do a search for Rsync. Okay, and here we go. Now, this is defined for both TCP and UDP, but we know from what I was looking at a moment ago, only TCP is going to be used, and here I find the conflict. Okay, Rsync has been erroneously misconfigured to listen on port 21, where you can see by comparing it to the line below it for UDP, it's actually supposed to listen on port 873, and so that's exactly what I'm going to correct. And like I said before, I am going to actually comment out the original line, which is the mistake, but it'll be there. So if anybody's looking through here, they can see the change that I made by my commented out line. I'm going to replace that with the corrected line, and I'm simply getting that port number from the line below it regarding UDP, and we're going to see if this helps. Okay. Now, I'm going to save that, and I need to restart a couple of services. It's actually kind of interesting. I want to show you the order that these services started up when the machine initially booted up. And there's a quick, easy way you can tell the order that they started up. I am currently in run level 3, so I'm going to go look at the summary of services in run level 3, and that's going to be at this location, Etsy rc.d rc3.d. Okay, and we're going to look at these two files, both the vsftpd control file as well as the xinetd control file. And as you can see, here is the root of the problem. xinetd starts up first at priority 56 on a scale of 1 to 100, and then vsftpd starts up after that at priority 60 on a scale of 1 to 100. So the problem is that xinetd was globbing onto port 21, and therefore vsftpd never had a chance. Okay, so I'm going to restart both of these, and now it actually doesn't matter the order because there should no longer be any conflict. Okay, so let's try this. I'm going to restart xinetd. Oops, just give me the summary here. Here's the restart command. Okay, and furthermore, I'm going to restart vsftpd. Okay, and remember that one was failing to start up because it could not actually glob onto its correct port 21. So now I can confirm a couple of important things here, going back to, like I said, one of my favorite commands, netstat. Okay, and we're going to look for either port 21 or port 873, and I see now this is correct. xinetd, which is representing rsync in this case, is correctly holding open port 873, and vsftpd is correctly holding open port 21, and we should be able to confirm successfully a couple of things here, starting with, let's start with the easy one, okay, ftp to localhost, and this prompts me to log in, so that's good. That means I'm actually connected to the FTP server. I'll try to log in anonymously, and that does in fact work. I am successfully logged in. Now, I can try the other bit, which is trying to get a listing about rsync services on this machine. Sorry. There we go, and that is actually a successful listing. What you see there is the description of a share, and you see my snarky little comment saying, why doesn't this work? And of course, where that's coming from is its own configuration file here in the Etsy directory called rsyncd.conf. Okay, and that's the way you define a file share for an anonymous rsync service. Okay, so that one's a bit obscure. Yes, perfectly honestly, it does not come up very often among our customers here. However, knowledge of the Etsy services file is absolutely essential, and seeing how that we could use the netstat command to resolve a port conflict, again, is an essential skill. So we have successfully resolved problem number 2 here in our little list. Okay, I'm going to go back to my home directory and see if we can keep plugging away at this.